chose me. I'm a champion, I need some trophies. I can draw the lane, I can shoot the three. I can run 100 yards, I can throw it deep. I ain't choose the gang trophy. I'm a champion, I need some trophies. I can draw the lane, I can shoot the three. I can run 100 yards, I can throw it.
2, 3. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Extra Point Take 2 along with Ben Curse. I'm Lauro Antonio. Ben, how's it going?
Doing well, Lauro. Glad to be on for tonight. I know I probably won't be on the whole program, but I'll be glad enough to recap a lot of the games that happened from this past weekend. We had a lot of really good ones. I probably wouldn't say as great as wildcard games, but I'm looking forward to talking about them and the analysis of those games. And obviously, we'll be moving on to the championships.
Well, let's do a quick recap of that Niners and Cowboys game. I'll tell you, this was a really good game that we got here. Ben, what was your thoughts?
Yeah, like I was mentioning before, this was a defensive overall battle between two really good defenses. Obviously, the Cowboys defense really steamrolled Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week. I expected the same for this week. I wasn't expecting a lot of points. Specifically, it was going to be hard to score a lot of touchdowns in this game. This is really what happened. It came down to a really gritty, fighty win for the San Francisco 49ers. I kind of an overall feel of the way that I expect this game to be. And, Brock Purdy did enough in this game to win them the football game. I think personally it was because of their defense in terms of they had two key interceptions on Dak Prescott, who I thought for Dak Prescott terms, I thought he was not great. He was okay. But for what they paid Dak Prescott, he was not good. I'd say unacceptable on many terms, actually, for the Dallas Cowboys, because they had chances. And he had a chance to go down with the game on the line to earn his money. And the first pass that he threw was almost a pick six the other way that would have iced the game already there. And he had a couple other very tough plays. Of course, the Tony Pollard injury really played a huge factor in this game. Kind of really outside of CeeDee Lamb, he was kind of the only other guy that Dak Prescott really trusted. He's probably their second best weapon to that team. So the running game for, I would say, San Fran in the second half played a lot better than they did in the first half. That was huge in terms of the way they wanted to move the football. And San Fran made some crucial stops down the rest of the game. So congrats to Isaiah's 49ers. They are moving on to face the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll talk about that game in a little bit. For Dallas, they have key questions. How many more years does Cowboys really think they have much more left in Dak? Does Mike McCarthy come back? Jerry Jones already pretty much said yesterday that he affirms he's probably going to come back as the head coach. That obviously will be a lot of questions. But Laura, let's talk about one guy that we didn't talk before, and that's Dan Quinn. We got to give the blouses and flowers to this guy. He's having a lot of media terms of Dan Quinn of what he's going to be doing this offseason, but he's pulled off a really good playoff so far. Really held Brady the GOAT in check last week, and he held that really high-powered San Francisco offense pretty much in check a lot of this game. And so I say thank you. Welcome me back, by the way. One thing, Isaiah, we didn't talk about from our, I'd say, take one and now take two is the performance from Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn really has shown now what he's proven to a lot of these teams. And that's why, I think Dan Quinn should go to the Denver Broncos. I think that Dan Quinn could get that Denver Broncos defense back. And I know that, Isaiah, we were talking about Sean Payton with Denver and how it could really help Russell Wilson. But I think really that if Sean Payton in Denver doesn't come to fruition, I think Dan Quinn's going to get a lot of suitors. And I think that really he can go to Denver. So I think it's a great win for San Fran. Dallas has a lot of questions. What do they do with Tony Pollard? That's a huge one. Dalton Schultz, two really key guys in that offense that could be on the move this offseason. So they're in a really tough spot. But their defense is going to be good for many, many years. That Dallas defense is tough. They're gritty. I just at the end of the day, San Fran played a little bit better. They were at home, so I thought that was a huge part in that game. And Dallas, when it comes to playoff time, down the stretch, it's really hard to bank on them. So I wasn't surprised that this ending happened. But San Fran was the better team, I thought, coming to this game. And I always tell myself defense wins championships. And Isaiah, I'm not trying to jinx your team right now, but the pick I have right now is looking pretty good.
And what about you, Isaiah? We started this game before we had technical difficulties. Do you have another thought on this game here?
Well, first of all, I just want to say the audio sounds so much better than the ending of that last show. I don't know what happened with that show. I don't know why it was like just giving weird echoes, but good thing that it's been solved now. But yeah, I mean, I pretty much said everything I wanted to say about that game. The other thing I did want to say about that game was I really hope that Kyle Shanahan doesn't have that conservative game plan in the first, like he did in the first half against the Eagles, because if he does, the Niners are in trouble. And if the Niners offensive line cannot block properly like they did yesterday, I mean, McGlinchey did you guys see he got thrown on his back? I mean, this dude, I've never seen a lineman in my life get picked up by another linebacker defensive lineman and just get flat out thrown on the ground. Like I've never seen that before. Like that's why people in San Fran don't like McGlinchey. It's because when he is not getting penalties, he's giving up sacks or he's getting thrown on his back. So the offensive line's got to play better. The defensive line's got to get, I feel like, a little bit more pressure on Jalen Hurts. Keep that same scheme that you use to stop the run. And I think the Niners will be fine, but I think offensively is more of the bigger issue, especially the offensive line. If they can hold up against Philly, give Brock Purdy some time to throw the football in that game, then I think the Niners will win that football game. But I think Kyle Shanahan, he needs to be a lot more creative than he did against Dallas on Sunday. But I still attribute that partly because Dan Quinn and Kyle Shanahan worked together for like 2 years, and Dan Quinn knows Kyle Shanahan's system in and out. Like every time the Niners play Dan Quinn's defenses, they always shut down our offense. So hopefully this was just a one-off by Shanahan, and hopefully that Shanahan has a better game plan for the Philadelphia Eagles. But Cole, I know you're not on the show, man. I know, you talk all that junk and you're hiding from me, but I brought my cowboy tears back. So, so that's the mystery Phantom flavor.
One thing before we move on, I would like to be curious to see how Brock Purdy does on the road in the playoffs, because you saw what he did at home. Now this is where you earn your money. And I know I don't know if we'll talk about Bengals Bills, but Joe Burrow did exactly what Bengal fans and what NFL fans need to show in terms of being an elite, very good quarterback, is going to a big environment, hostile environment, and balling out. And if Brock Purdy can go into Philly, NFC title game, really good defense, and making his money, the praise, Isaiah, that you'll be getting from Brock Purdy on ESPN will be nothing like any other. So buckle up. We'll see if that happens next week.
Get your popcorn ready. Now, the next game we'll talk about here, we're going to save Bengals Bills for last, but we're going to talk about the Jags and Eagles. I mean, I watched this game. I was thinking that Patrick Mahomes was hurt, had a high ankle sprain. It looks like he's going to be good to go for the AFC Championship game against the Cincinnati Bengals, who they will play for a second year in a row. And I'm like, how did that even happen for the Cincinnati Bengals to come in to Buffalo to win, which we'll talk about in a minute? Isaiah, you talk about the Jags. Despite the loss for the Jags, it was a great season. In my Madden League, I had the Jags being 10-7, which I think they would have been a 10-7 team, then 9-8.
This weekend was kind of painful. Besides the Niners, winning. The rest of the weekend was kind of painful because literally everything that I wanted to happen and all my picks lost. So I was kind of bummed out about that. My Super Bowl pick has officially died because I don't know. Ben wasn't on that show, but I had Niners Giants NFC Championship game. And I had Jaguars Bengals NFC Championship game, and I was really close to getting it right. And I don't know if Ben knew my Super Bowl pick, but it was Niners Jaguars. It was Niners Jaguars going Super Bowl matchup in Arizona. So that officially died. But in terms of this game, first of all, congratulations to Doug Peterson and the Jacksonville Jaguars. What a season by the Jags. What an absolute transformation by Trevor Lawrence, looking after last year when he looked like a guy that looked like he should be picked in the 4th round. He comes back this year and, validated the #1 draft pick selection. Doug Peterson, I mean, this guy should be the AFC Coach of the Year. If this guy's not the AFC Coach of the Year, then you should honestly remove that award entirely from the NFL Honors Show, because I don't know who you give it to in the AFC if it's not Doug Peterson. I mean, this guy took a team that had the #1 pick last year, was the worst team in all of football last season, was a laughing stock with the whole Urban Meyer saga, and he transformed them this season into a team that started 3-7. They started 3-7. Everybody was like, yeah, they're done. They're pretty much, they should start packing their bags for vacation. But they go on a massive win streak. They win the AFC South. And guess what? They end up winning their first playoff, winning their division, the AFC South. And then they win a playoff game after being down 27-0 against the Chargers. I know it was at home, but still, that was super, super impressive. And they played the Chiefs hard. It was a tie game at one point in that game, but Kansas City ultimately was the more talented team. So you got to give them a lot of credit. You got to give Doug Peterson and the Jaguars a lot of credit, and he should definitely be the Coach of the Year in the AFC. Also, I just got to say about this game, though, in general, I think what really cost the Jags was 2 things. Number one, missed opportunities, because the Jaguars had a lot of opportunities to take the lead and potentially win this football game. I mean, the first one was the bomb that Trevor Lawrence threw to Christian Kirk, which he put it right on the money. He threw it 60 yards deep. If Christian Kirk catches that football, hangs on to it, that's a walk into the end zone. Like, Christian Kirk is getting paid big money, man. You got to make those type of catches. That's what Jacksonville brought you in to do. It's to make those type of catches in those big games. You're the #1 receiver. You got to make those type of catches, and with him dropping that, the Jaguars, they got the first down. They did drive down the field, but guess what? They ended up getting stopped, and they got a field goal instead of a touchdown. If they had gotten a touchdown in that situation, Jacksonville would actually have led Kansas City. I believe it would have been 14-10 instead of it being 10-10, and you would have definitely seen the whole momentum shift and the crowd at Arrowhead just become super quiet there. And then there were other plays, such as, Trevor Lawrence missed the open tight end Ingram that would have gotten them a first down, but instead they had to kick another field goal. But the one that really hurt, I think, was, and I don't think the Jags would have won this game at that point, but they were down 27-17, and they drove down the football field. There was, I believe, 6 minutes left in the game. They drove down the football field. Lawrence throws a pass to, I believe it was Zay Jones, catches it, and the guy tries to make a move, and he fumbles the football. That was, I think, the killer of the game, because that and the Christian Kirk drop. Because if you get that first down, you get down to the 2 or the 1, you punch that baby in, there's about, you trim the lead down to 3. There's a hobble. Mahomes coming back onto the field. Your defense have been playing pretty lights out football in the second half of that game. I don't know. Who knows? Jacksonville might have won that game had they not fumbled the football there. And then I think obviously the Lawrence interception, yeah, that really hurt. I think the game was kind of out of hand at that point. So yeah, it was just those missed opportunities and the defense not stopping Kansas City's offense. I know Chad Henne, credit to him. I mean, he came in, led a 96-yard drive or 98-yard drive down the football field, but that was a drive that the defense needed to step up, because if the defense had stepped up there, that goes back to my missed opportunity, because if you had gotten that touchdown earlier where you are up 14-10, and you get the stop there, it would have been a totally different ball game. But your defense needs to get a stop there. You cannot allow a 98-yard drive. That was totally inexcusable and unacceptable. You're playing their backup quarterback in Chad Henne. The Chiefs, I'm pretty sure, they're super emotional after their quarterback got hurt. You got to put your foot down and get a stop in that situation. And the Jaguars didn't. And, they let the Chiefs drive down the football field for a touchdown. And, that's what happens in these big games, these playoff games, these possessions where, you have things that almost happen and you don't do your job. It ends up coming back to cost you. And I think that's what ended up costing the Jags in this football game. And the last thing I'll say about this game is, I was really, really not happy about the officiating, because it just seemed like, and I don't know if Ben, you or Loro could agree with me on this, but it seemed like every ticky-tack call or every call that was like 50-50 always went against Jacksonville. And I think that, you probably would have expected it because it's in Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes is the golden boy of the NFL. But that fumble where Zay Jones catches it, it was, you could dispute it whether it was a football move or not. I'm not saying you changed that call. I'm saying you should at least review that, man. Like, I don't understand why they did not go back to New York for a replay review. I thought that the fact that they just instantly call it a fumble and then they instantly give Kansas City the football back and not even take a look at it, I think that was just terrible in the officials, because if that was Patrick Mahomes, if that was Aaron Rodgers, if that was Tom Brady, let's face it, that would have been reviewed. Whether it was a fumble or not, it would have been at least reviewed. So that was one of the calls that really bothered me, was that one right there. And then there were like other ticky-tack calls that I was just like, there were several pass interference calls that the Jags never got, and they should have gotten them, where the Kansas City defenders just blatantly held the receivers, or they grabbed onto their neck when they're not supposed to. It was just some of those calls that makes you question the integrity of the NFL.
Yeah, and Ben, what is your thoughts on this Jags and Chiefs matchup?
Yeah, I just want to congratulate the Jags on a fantastic season. For myself, I'll admit, I thought they would be okay, but I didn't think they would make the playoffs. But they've completely exceeded my expectations on a high. This reminded me of last year's Cincinnati Bengals team a little bit, the Cinderella type of run that they had. A really good coach. I wouldn't say he's a young coach, but Doug Peterson really kind of changing the culture, really helping Trevor Lawrence come around and becoming the quarterback that a lot of people anticipate coming out of the draft. And I know, Isaiah, I know you might not agree with this, but I got to give a lot of credit to Patrick Mahomes. The guy legitimately was on one leg and he refused. And I know for a lot of quarterbacks, it's like, yeah, I don't want to risk it here and there. The guy refused to not go out of that football game. That comes to show that I get it. You don't want to over exaggerate it, but he was trying to get there for his team and help them win the football game. And to let the fact that Patrick Mahomes was able to be out there and do it all and put their team out in position to win, it just shows you my respect in terms of how good the guy is, competitive he is. As much as I want to praise the Jags, and deservedly so, they had a fantastic season, and I'll get to them a little bit after. But that was a huge part in this game, because if Patrick Mahomes refused to not going back in this game, if he couldn't play, I think the Jaguars win this game. I really just don't know if Chad Henne consistently can go out there and really put up points. And points were at a premium in this game, because I thought Mahomes really struggled here and there. I mean, he was playing on one leg, but I think for next week, I know you guys will talk about it a little bit later, but this reminded me. I remember when the Chiefs played the Browns a couple years ago, and Patrick Mahomes had an injury, and I know that you can't really predict injuries, but the guy is an absolute warrior. And I think that you look at for a guy like a Brady, that we've kind of accustomed to. He doesn't have a lot of crazy big injuries, but the guy, people that are really good quarterbacks can take the hits. But in terms of adapting and responding, and I thought Patrick Mahomes, the stats weren't, he had 22 for 30 for 2 touchdowns. He was a little bit under 200 yards, but yeah, I mean, the guy was absolutely dominant. On one leg, which is insane. Travis Kelce had 14 catches for 2 touchdowns. I know what you guys will talk about a little bit later. The guy's incredible. He really kind of just did everything he wanted in this game. I think that since he's going to be having a different game plan next week, but I give a lot of credit to Jacksonville. I think Doug Peterson, I agree with Isaiah, should consider coach of the year. And I think that with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm not sure about his status right now, but he's a huge part to that offense. I know Pacheco's a really good running back, but between Edwards-Helaire and McKinnon and Pacheco, I mean, that's a really good running back tandem. And Kadarius Toney has been a really unknown star, a guy that the Giants actually moved on from. In this game, he had 5 catches for 36 yards. But yeah, Jacksonville had a great season. Etienne, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Ingram, Marvin Jones, you name it. Their defense is a lot of good up-and-coming stars. So I expect the Chiefs to win this game. Hopefully Mahomes will be okay for the showdown for the Bengals next week. But congrats to the Jags once again. And yeah, that's pretty much my overall thoughts.
All right. So next up, guys, we're going to talk about the Giants and Eagles. You talk about that game was just a blowout. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about this. Isaiah, quick thoughts on this Giants and Eagles game. The future's bright for Big Blue, but for the Eagles, they exposed this young New York Giants team.
This blowout by the Philadelphia Eagles just make the Minnesota Vikings look even worse, because the fact of the matter that the Eagles did this to this Giants defense, it just shows you that, like, come on, man, like Kirk Cousins, you really can't shred that Giants defense like the Eagles did. And they couldn't even run the football against this Giants defense. It just makes it look even worse. The Eagles, they ran the football right down the Giants' throat. The Giants had no idea what was coming when it came to the running game. They couldn't stop it whatsoever. The Eagles just had their way with them in the running game. And, Jalen Hurts, I know a lot of people are going to give him a lot of credit, and, he deserves some credit, but let's not act like this guy played like, he was the second coming of, Doug Williams out there, because this guy, if you look at his stats, passing wise, he didn't really do too much. He was 16 of 24 for, 154 yards, 2 touchdowns. But it was mostly the running game that carried him. Kenneth Gainwell, 12 carries, 112 yards, 1 touchdown, averaged 9.3 yards a carry. Miles Sanders, 17 carries for 90 yards. He was a monster in this football game, as well as Hurts with his leg and Boston Scott. The passing game, they didn't really do much. It was mostly about the running game and the defense. So, Giants had a great season. Philadelphia, they are a really good team. It's going to be really tough going up against them, especially in Philly next week or this upcoming week in the NFC Championship game. But I don't think, for the New York Giants, I don't think that the reason, like, everybody's going to look at this game and say, oh, the Giants didn't deserve to be in the playoffs. No, they deserve to be in the playoffs. They just couldn't stop the running game, and the Giants have a lot of holes on defense that they need to be fixed. They offense, I think Daniel Jones is the future. You got to bring back Saquon Barkley because he's the guy that makes that offense flow. But I think the Giants need to focus on the defense more than the offense. And I'll say one last thing about Brian Daboll before I give the floor to Ben. I thought that Brian Daboll, this was the very first game that I said to myself that Brian Daboll does not does not know what he's doing, because there were a couple times where I was like, really, you're gonna go for it on 4th and 8? I know it was in Philly territory, but it was deep in Philly territory.
Right.
You can't go for it in that situation. Like, I know you want to be aggressive, but that was reckless by Brian Dable. It's the first quarter. Let your punter punt it deep, and let him pin the Eagles deep into their own territory, and let your defense try to stop them there. That's better than you going for it. You don't get it, and then Philly gets the ball in very good field position. And the other one was, and I know it didn't really matter, but you are down by 21. It's the fourth quarter with like 10 minutes left. It's like fourth. I think it's like 4th and 2 at your own 20-some yard line. You got to go for it, man. Like, you can't even think about punting in that situation. You punted right there. That was basically you just waving the white flag. So I know it was his first season. He did a tremendous job, but Brian Dable's got some things to grow upon. The defense needs to work on some stuff, but and Philadelphia is a great team, but they're not that great of a team that everybody is propping them up to be right now.
Then we'll go with Ben here. What's your thoughts on this blowout here? I mean, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about this game because of how boring this game was.
Yeah, well, I know Laura, I talked about it with you last week. I thought the Eagles were going to win. I didn't expect it to be this much of a score. I thought it would be a close game, divisional game. But the way that these two teams played the last time in Philly. A lot of people actually had potentially the big blue upsetting, but which could have happened. But the Giants essentially have weaknesses shown into a buzzsaw of a Philadelphia Eagles team that has a lot of deep pieces on their roster. And what I mean by that is, I agree with Isaiah. Jalen Hurts, he made some decent throws, but it's not like he was out there being the next Peyton Manning or Tom Brady out there and big time moments. I mean, he did enough to do what he had to do, but it was the running game. Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, the Giants killer, getting in the end zone once again, as well as Kenneth Gainwell doing a really good job. Nick Sirianni and that offensive staff. I mean, they literally. I mean, if it's not Kyle Shanahan, in terms of the running scheme, they do a fantastic job too. That offensive line's really, really tough. Lane Johnson being back is huge for that offense line for the Philadelphia Eagles. And then that defense is, like I said, you have Eagles defense, you have the Niners defense. That Eagles defense, man, I mean, yes, the Giants offense, outside of Barkley, they don't have a lot of outside pieces. I think they should go out and potentially go out and maybe if they get Daniel Jones back to get a premier decent guy, a key receiver, because let's be real, Richie James and Isaiah Hodgins, they're not all, that's going to, pretty much scare an offensive defense away. So it pretty much when they were kind of down big in that game, I'm like, there's no way that the Giants can even come back, even though that Brian Dable did get as great as a team that they have. And they don't have a great future ahead. I praise them. They weren't expected to go as deep as they were, kind of like Jacksonville, but from the NFC. He definitely got a little bit outcoached in this game by Nick Sirianni. Dable, I felt like I think the Giants had a strip sack on Hurts after they had that touchdown by Breida, and the Eagles got it. And then I think that they stopped them, and then the Giants were only down by like 14. I'm like, oh, maybe that they have a little bit in them. And then after the 4th down and like 10 at like their own yard line or whatever, I know that they asked Brian Dable after the game, and they Dable's just like, well, we were trusting our defense. They're playing a lot better. Bro, you got to go for it. There's no turning back the clock. It's a playoff game. And I think if he wanted to redo that play again, I think he'd go for it. But in that moment of time, that was a complete terrible call use of game clock management, kind of like McCarthy in that game against the Niners, punting it away. And that was the white flag right there. The Eagles offensively, they drove, had a lot of long drives clockwise. So I'm like, yep, that's it. And the Eagles, top to bottom, clearly wiped the floor in that game. So they deservedly so to be moving on to this game against the Niners to see who could battle out to win that game.
All right, next up, guys, we're going to talk about the Bengals taking on the Bills here. I mean, man, talk about Joe Burrow. I mean, He is an elite quarterback already, Ben. And you talk about the Bills. I know the Bills are a good team, but I really think what really hurt them down the stretch is basically their defense was lackadaisical. Josh Allen had that elbow injury kind of lingered, but he still found a way to get the Bills into the playoffs somehow and win a division title. I'm not saying this is the end of the Bills' road to the Super Bowl, Ben. I do think that the Buffalo Bills, their window is still right there.
Yeah, I'll go first with this one because I know I have a lot more to say about this at any game. This, by far, this Cincinnati Bengals team, and I know I love the Patriots, I always will, but if there was a team out there that was not the Patriots, it's the Cincinnati Bengals. I've always wanted this team to get better and better as years go by, and they've always, whether it's Andy Dalton, whether it's heartbreak after heartbreak, if they got the specific quarterback, if they got the right culture fit, that team in Cincy, I mean, they don't really have a lot going on for them. Now that's the Reds and stuff like that. They have Ohio State, but it's time to put the respect on Joe Burrow if you haven't already or not. This guy right now has poise and cool like no other quarterback right now in this league, and I mean that because a couple things. His instincts are top notch for a young kid as of right now. He went into a snowy environment essentially where DeMar Hamlin was there, which, by the way, that was an awesome, cool thing to see. I know that he wasn't out the field, but the overall environment, everything like that, it was supposed to be a high shootout type of a game. And, I mean, Joe, I think it might have been with the pretty much a lot of the tickets pretty much already, all those Bills Chiefs already, get ready, and stuff like that. And the Bengals are like, I'm taking this personal. And they went into their house and they just not only won, they won. I mean, they made a huge statement that, the first drive from Burrow going to Jamar Chase for that touchdown. And pretty much from there on, the rest was history. Their running game was doing great against that Buffalo defense. But Joe Burrow was by far, because I know people like, who's better, Joe Burrow and Josh Allen? They're both great. But Joe Burrow completely won that game yesterday over Josh Allen. On all facets of the game. You could put both of them in the top five by far. They're both great quarterbacks. But Joe Burrow was by far the best quarterback, I would say, of the whole weekend. He was completely in command, never gives up. And I think that this is the reason why, since he's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the AFC, they got a really good overall crew with guys and weapons. And yes, maybe T. Higgins might be moving on at some point. They're going to have to kind of figure out, keeping Burrow for extension, which they will. But they have the pieces there. They got the line. They were missing 3 offensive linemen in this game. You got to keep that into account. They had Jonah Williams out. They had Alex Kappa out. They had a couple other guys. And they're just like, we're going to keep on going. We're, injuries or not, we're not going to make that as an excuse. And got to give credit, man. They Joe Burrow, Hayden Hurst, everybody from that Bengals team going to the environment. I got to give them probably the team of the weekend. Because Buffalo's a really damn good football team. And lower on Isaiah, Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills came to show that their flaws are needed, and that's they need a running game. They need a running game because when you get to the playoffs, you need to be able to have a balanced attack, and especially in the elements, run the football. You saw what Baltimore did the week before in that football game. They ran the football with J.K. Dobbins and Tyler Huntley, and I'm like, with Josh Allen and company, they decided to throw. I think they had 9 20-plus yard passes in that in elements. If you're going to, you don't have to always go hero mode. That's why I feel sometimes the Buffalo Bills, they sometimes get into parts where they're going to keep on going with, I know Josh Allen with this great arm and stuff like that. But, Ken Dorsey, I think, gets a ton of heat, for the way that this Buffalo team kind of was held back in terms of where they want to be. Between Dorsey, maybe a little bit on McDermott, but it all comes down at the end of the game. Their coaching is key. And I think that's a big reason why Buffalo's not moving on, because their coaching was not great. Josh Allen also, the last couple of games here, I'm not going to go so far and saying overrated per se with Stephen Wayne's comment, but Josh Allen at times is very loose with the football. He reminds me of a Ben Roethlisberger, where he's a very good version of Ben Roethlisberger, where he's really tough to guard. He moves his feet a lot. It's a really high, great release, but Bengals defense is a lot of credit too. They were really locked in on Stephon Diggs, Mike Hilton, a lot of company. Bell from that defense. The defensive coordinator from the Bengals was going after Josh Allen a lot in this game and just scheming with different strategies where he didn't make them beat them with his legs, because that's what he tries to do. So the Bills have to really figure out running the football, because if they run the football and they get the scheme to run the football, they will be a dominant team. You saw what Brian Dable did last year. They had to find a way to run the football, and the Bills a lot of this season were able to get away with it. But when you play the better teams and you get in the playoffs, you've got to have a running game. So congratulations to the Bengals. They 100% won this football game. I'm not saying the Bills definitely are going to have a chance to move on in future years to come to make the Super Bowl. I don't think their win is close yet, but the Bills have to reality check of, man, we're not the only team to get to this certain point. The Bengals are going to be here for years to come.
And then, Isaiah, what was your thoughts on this blowout win for the Bengals over the Bills? I mean, the Bills, this team is good. I'll tell you that. With Josh Allen and them, like Ben said, Isaiah, the Bills need a running game. Like, do I like Devin Singletary? I think he's okay, but I prefer James Cook. But I also think you got to get another running back to complement this offense. This offense for the Bills just looked stagnant.
This was the most surprising and disappointing result of this entire weekend. I think that a lot of people, if you had asked, a million people right around the world that watch football, and you would ask them, like, what game this weekend will be the best game of this entire weekend, I think a lot of people, or majority of them, would have said Bengals and Bills, and probably the second one would have been Niners, Cowboys, or it would have either been that or would have been flipped, whatever order. But it would have been those two games. The Niners-Cowboys game absolutely lived up to the hype, but the Bengals-Bills game did not. And, I'm going to have to agree with what Steven said earlier. Josh Allen, he is the most overrated quarterback in the NFL. This year was supposed to be Josh Allen's his Simba moment. This was supposed to be his crowning as a king moment. This was supposed to be his year where he finally gets over the hump and beats the Chiefs and go to the Super Bowl and gives the city of Buffalo their first ever Super Bowl championship. But you know what? Instead, he wilted. He wilted in the big moments. He wilted in the snow. When Buffalo, you're supposed to be used to playing in the snow. You're supposed to be used to the chilly climate conditions and the snow, man. Cincinnati was supposed to be the team that they should be the team that should be shaking their head like, what's going on? It's snowing. Oh my God. But instead it was Buffalo that was doing that. And I was like, how is this even happening? Because the Buffalo Bills always play in snow. They always play in snow in November, December, and they always play in frigid temperatures. It made no sense whatsoever what was going on. I thought Ken Dorsey tried to be too pass happy in this football game, when we all know what's the recipe for having success in the snow. It is run, 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 run. Run and play defense. That's the recipe to win in the snow. But instead, he wanted it to be the Josh Allen show. So you know what they did? They pass. And when they tried to pass, the Bengals blitzes kept getting home and sacking the crap out of Josh Allen, or it would force Josh Allen to throw it away, or it would force Josh Allen to make just terrible decisions. This was terrible game planning by McDermott. It was terrible game planning by Ken Dorsey. McDermott's defenses just got lit up by Joe Burrow, and the running game by the Bengals. I mean, I could not believe what I was watching. And remember, Loro, when we did our NFL playoff preview, I told you that the one thing I told you was the thing that really made me nervous about the Buffalo Bills, it wasn't their offense. It was their defense. It was their defensive line and their secondary. And we saw that got exposed yesterday when Joe Burrow was lighting them up in the passing game, and the running game led by Joe Mixon was just running right through that defensive line. That defensive line could not stop that Bengals rushing attack whatsoever. And kudos to Joe Burrow. You know, it's in the snow. You're not familiar with those frigid temperatures. You're not used to playing in those frigid temperatures. You go into Buffalo in a hostile environment in the game where the last time these two teams played, you know, DeMar Hamlin suffered that tragic injury, and this was supposed to be the Bills were supposed to win for DeMar. And you go into that raucous environment, you go into those frigid atmosphere, and you go in and you play like an MVP. I was wrong about Joe Burrow. I remember I said when he was first drafted, this dude is overrated as hell, and this dude is not going to amount to anything. And I remember saying that, you know, I would rather take Nick Mullins over him. And that, you know, is a take that will live in infamy forever. But I was wrong about Joe Burrow. Joe, you have my respect. Kudos to you and the Bengals on what you guys accomplished yesterday in Buffalo. And for the Buffalo Bills, man, that was a terrible choke job by Sean McDermott, Josh Allen, and Ken Dorsey. That was just a terrible game planning by those guys, and it was just terrible execution by Josh Allen. It was just a terrible day overall for the Buffalo Bills.
And Ben Kerr says losing Von Miller was absolutely massive. The defense wasn't the same since, which he's right about that. But now, before we go on to our championship Sunday picks, we have some news and notes around the NFL that we should get to. Well, the Arizona Cardinals are one of the teams that are looking for a new head coach, and reportedly so today, they have interviewed Brian Flores for their vacant head coaching position. Although you and I both predicted that I still want a Byron Leftwich to be the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, now that he's fired from Tampa Bay, I could see him being the offensive coordinator for the Cardinals. That way he can work with Kyler Murray, which I really think Leftwich's system could really fit Murray's skill set if you look at it. Assuming they choose Brian Flores, because Monty Ossenfort, the new general manager, the new GM of the Cardinals, has a connection to Brian Flores. What is your thoughts on this, Isaiah?
I think that Brian Flores would be a great fit for the Arizona Cardinals, but I don't know if he'll get the job because of the pending lawsuit right now that he's filed against the NFL. You know, he's trying to work in the NFL and he's got a lawsuit against his employer. So I don't know if he would get it. I don't know if, Roger Goodell would let him hire Brian Flores. But if he does, I think Brian Flores would be great, because I think that this Cardinals franchise and this Cardinals team, they need some discipline in that organization, because I felt like with Cliff Kingsbury, it was too laid back. It was too relaxed. That's why they committed so many penalties. There wasn't any structure. There wasn't any discipline. And Brian Flores would bring that hard-nosed, no-nonsense New England Patriots attitude to the Cardinals. And I think that's what they need. They need some of that after that relaxed, laid-back culture that Cliff Kingsbury had. And their defense was a mess last year. So I think he would definitely help in fixing their defense. And I think that, honestly, Brian Flores, I don't think he'll be really tough like he was in Miami, because I still think he'll bring that Patriots culture to the Cardinals if he did get hired. But I think that with his stint in Pittsburgh as the defensive assistant for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's going to learn Mike Tomlin's culture, and he's going to, mix that Steelers culture and that Patriots culture into it. And I think he'll be a better coach because of that. But to be honest, Laurel, I think the guy that if Arizona, I think, should hire is Dan Quinn. I think Dan Quinn and David Shaw, a former Stanford coach, I think they would be, tremendous fits, because Dan Quinn brings structure. He brings discipline. No nonsense. We'll be able to fix that defense. David Shaw, great leader. Kyler Murray would respect him. His offenses would fit better in the NFL than they do in college, and he would be able to garner the respect in the locker room, which is something that Cliff Kingsbury didn't do. So I like Brian Flores. I think he's a good fit for them. But for me, I would much rather prefer like a David Shaw or a Dan Quinn for Arizona.
Well, if you look at the other candidates here, Aaron Glenn, the Lions defensive coordinator, has received a requested interview here. Vance Joseph, the Cardinals defensive coordinator. He's an in-house option. I don't know if they go there. Sean Payton, they are scheduled to interview him as well. They've completed the interview with Frank Reich. D'Amico Ryans is there as well. But now we talk about the Atlanta Falcons open defensive coordinator spot and who I think should be their defensive coordinator. Brian Flores was on there, but Vic Fangio, you talk about his name being swirled in. But I'll tell you, Isaiah, where I think Vic Fangio should go, Isaiah, is the Miami Dolphins being their defensive coordinator. That scheme that he has defensively is going to help this Miami Dolphins defense too. But if it's the Falcons, he can really turn around a defense that is bottom in the league to being elite.
Selfishly, I want Vic Fangio back in San Francisco if D'Amico Ryans leaves, because I think if you add Kyle Shanahan, the offensive genius, the mastermind on offense, and one of the offensive masterminds in the NFL, and you add Vic Fangio, the best defensive coach in the NFL, I mean, that would be scary for anybody in the NFL. But in terms of him being a fit for Atlanta, I think any team would be a fit for Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio would turn around any football team in the NFL. I think he would do a great job in Atlanta. I think he would do a great job in Miami. Plus, he's got the talent to work with in Miami. You talk about Christian Wilkins. You have Bradley Chubb as well. You have other players in that secondary. I think he would do a great job in Miami. And Miami's ready to win now, especially on offense. They just need some fixing on the defensive side of the football. I think he would be a great fit for both. If I had to pick one, I probably would pick Miami. But, selfishly, I want him in San Francisco. So I hope he doesn't take any of those jobs.
Well, and you talk about the Ravens here. They parted ways with offensive coordinator Greg Roman. Since the Titans have fired Todd Downing, I'm like, hey, there's an open offensive coordinator spot in Nashville. And I'm like, I think Greg Roman should work with Mike Vrabel. And I'll say why. If you're going to start Malik Willis in the near future, Malik Willis would be perfect for Greg Roman's system.
I think this was a massive mistake by the Baltimore Ravens. I think Greg Roman got scapegoated in Baltimore. I don't think it was his fault. They put up a great fight with Tyler Huntley as their quarterback against the Bengals, and their running game was absolutely electric in that game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Lamar Jackson wants that big contract. Lamar Jackson, he's a guy that is not a good passer. Let's face that. He's not a good passer. He's a really good runner, and he's dynamic as a runner. So that's why the offense works so well, because Greg Roman's ground and pound scheme was tailored to Lamar, and it made Lamar so successful. Now with him, let's say they move to a pro-style offense, right? And an offense that uses a little bit less of a running game. How will Lamar do? I think Lamar will get exposed because of his passing deficiencies, and I just don't think that he will look like that star quarterback that he looks like with Greg Roman's offense. I think that it was a terrible move to part ways with Greg Roman. Greg Roman, he would be a good fit, like you mentioned, Loro, with Tennessee, with Derrick Henry. But I think that Tennessee, they need to be better in the passing game. They're really good at running the football, but I think if they're going to get a new offensive coordinator and a new offensive philosophy, it's got to be a little bit more pass happy than it was the last couple of years under, first Arthur Smith, or first Matt LaFleur, then Arthur Smith, and then Todd Downing. But I think that the Ravens are making a big mistake. In fact, if I'm the Ravens right now, and this is pretty much a big hot take, I would not sign Lamar Jackson to that massive contract extension. And the reason why is because I don't think that his style of play, with him running around like crazy, I don't think that you can win with that, and I don't think that can last long-term in the NFL. If you sign him to that massive contract, you better hope that he improves mightily in the passing game, because if he doesn't, dude, you're stuck you're going to be stuck with him. When he gets older, he's going to lose his legs, and you're going to be stuck with a mediocre Lamar Jackson, and you're going to be stuck with a very mediocre quarterback. So if I'm the Ravens right now, this is your chance to get out. This is your chance to find, a quarterback that's not a gimmick quarterback. And I think the Ravens should take that opportunity. In fact, if I'm the Ravens, I would trade him to Indy. I would try to see if Indy's interested. If they're interested, go get the 5th pick for Lamar Jackson. Let Indy sign him to like a massive deal, and then you could try to go get C.J. Stroud, or maybe go get like a Derek Carr or someone like that. Because I feel like that long term, moving forward, it's shown that you can't win by just running the football. You have to run the football, but you also have to pass the football to be great and win as well.
So you like my idea about Greg Roman being the offensive coordinator with the Titans?
Yes, I do. I also think he will be a great fit for the Jets because I think that his ground and pound attack is what the Jets need, because Zach Wilson has shown he's not a really good passer as a quarterback.
Well, you bring a good point there for the Jets opening. If Greg Roman takes the Jets job, this could really save Zach Wilson in New York.
It could, exactly. It will help Zach Wilson, get out of the pocket a lot more. And also, the Jets with Breece Hall coming back, they rely heavily on that running game. So I think
that's a good destination, another good destination for Greg Roman now that he's out of Baltimore. I put Tennessee there just because that could really help, because the Titans are a ground and pound team, and he could really utilize Derrick Henry and Malik Willis well if he's their starter. And also Treylon Burks is their number 1 receiver, which I think he is.
Also, watch out for Arizona. It depends on who the head coach is, but I could see it because Kyler Murray's a mobile quarterback, and Greg Roman is really good with mobile quarterbacks.
Yeah, the potential fits for Roman are Tennessee, the Jets, and the Cardinals. So that's where I see Greg Roman being an offensive coordinator there. He's not a guy that's going to develop quarterbacks. He's good with mobile quarterbacks. He's good with how to implement a great rushing attack.
Yes, he definitely is. And I think that, he would be great with like all those destinations that you just listed.
Well, you have to talk about the Browns. They fired Joe Woods. Guess who they hired? I wanted Vic Fangio in Cleveland because, look, he would have made Myles Garrett a star, and then he would have made that defense a lot better. But instead, they hired former Lions defensive coordinator. He was part of that Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl winning team, and that is Jim Schwartz. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on it is that, I like the hire. Jim Schwartz is an excellent defensive mind, and I think that he would do a great job with Myles Garrett and all the guys that the Cleveland Browns have on the defensive side of the ball. I like the hire for Cleveland, and I think that he also brings some head coaching experience, which will help Kevin Stefanski because, even though he's been a head coach for a couple of years, he's still growing. So I do like the move by the Cleveland Browns.
What's your thoughts on this hot take I sent you on the group chat? If Dan Quinn's the head coach of the Denver Broncos, what's your thoughts on Darrell Bevell as OC, Gus Bradley defensive coordinator?
Oh, God, please don't get me started on Darrell Bevell. I don't think that guy should even be coaching high school football.
But here's the rumor here. Darrell Bevell has turned down offensive coordinator opportunities, and he's staying in Miami to be their passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach.
He's good coaching quarterbacks. I'll give him that. He's good as a position coach, but no way do I trust him to run an offense because –
And look, the reason why I say that is because – Russell Wilson has thrived under Darrell Bevell in his early part of his career.
He has. You're right. But guess what? That was 7 years ago. And the game has passed him by. And his offenses are now extinct in the NFL. Look what he was doing with Jacksonville. Look how successful Trevor Lawrence is now after Darrell Bevell left. There's a reason for that. It's because Darrell Bevell.
But there's another offensive coordinator in mind that if Dan Quinn doesn't go with Bevel, who he has familiarity with in the Seahawks. How about Brian Schottenheimer?
I mean, that's a good one. That's a good one. I'd take Schottenheimer over Bevel for sure.
Well, and then do you like my take about if Quinn's the head coach in Denver, Gus Bradley as defensive coordinator? You there, Isaiah?
Sorry about that. I was on mute, but I do like that. I think that Gus Bradley, he's a really good defensive mind. He's a really aggressive defensive mind, and he knows that like Seahawks defense that Dan Quinn is going to employ if he's a head coach, and he's employing right now. So I do like that take. I just don't know about the offensive coordinators that you have
No,
set
I'm
up.
saying that I'm thinking Dan Quinn is likely now going to be the head coach of the Denver Broncos because he has familiarity with Russell Wilson. And if that move happens, I could see Gus Bradley joining the Denver Broncos as Quinn's defensive coordinator.
I mean, we'll see what happens. But for me, I still got Sean Payton. I still think Denver, because I think Denver right now is the leader for Sean
Well,
Payton.
if you talk about Denver, their defense was not bad last year. It wasn't the problem.
Yeah. No, their defense was great. Their defense was great. Everybody saying their defense was not good is wrong. Their defense was actually great. It was their
They
offense.
have great defensive pieces. Like they traded away like Chubb to rebuild, but I do like Isaiah Simmons and Surtain, who I think are key pieces to that defense. But I also think that their offense needs work. But I do think their offense is going to get back on track here for the Denver Broncos. But as for Carolina, Ken Dorsey, he's my choice for the head coaching position in Carolina.
I was gonna
because they completed an interview with him. They completed an interview with Adriel Averio. Ben Johnson decided to not. He withdrew his name from consideration, but they also completed the head coaching interview with Frank Reich.
I like Frank Reich. I think Frank Reich would be a good hire by the Carolina Panthers. I think they need a guy that, is good at developing quarterbacks, good at developing an offense. And I think with Frank Reich, he was given a raw deal in Indianapolis. I think, that guy, he would be a great head coach if he does get a second opportunity. And Carolina hired a guy with no NFL head coaching experience in Matt Rule last time. I think they need to pivot to a guy that has head coaching experience that can turn the culture around. And I think Frank Reich is the right fit for that situation.
We have to talk about my Patriots next. They have interviewed Bill O'Brien to be their offensive coordinator. I'm telling you, Isaiah, he's their top choice to be their offensive coordinator. I've also heard rumors that Matt Patricia's future in New England is in danger.
I'm not surprised. I think Bill O'Brien from the beginning was, the favorite for that for that offensive coordinator job because of his familiarity in New England and especially with Bill Belichick, and also his familiarity with the Kraft family, and his familiarity with Alabama, where Mac Jones went to school with. So I do think that he's good. He would be a good fit for them. He would definitely be a way, way better fit than Judge or Matt Patricia.
And I think Judge is going to get reassigned to the special teams department.
Yeah, which that's the right fit for him. He's not offensive coordinator material or even quarterbacks coach material. I think that was a disaster from the beginning. But I think that for New England's sake, for Bill Belichick's sake, they gotta modernize that offense. I think that's what they need
for Mac
do.
Jones. Yeah, I don't think the Patriots are going to go after Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or Lamar Jackson. I don't expect them to.
No, well, it depends who they hire, right? If they hire, let's say Greg Roman, for example, if they hire Greg Roman, Lamar could be in play. If they hire Nathaniel Hackett, Aaron Rodgers could be in play because remember, Aaron Rodgers loves Nathaniel Hackett for no reason. I don't know why, but he does. If they hire Mike LaFleur, Aaron Rodgers could because remember, Aaron Rodgers played or plays under Matt LaFleur, the brother of Mike LaFleur. So it really depends who they hire. If it's Bill O'Brien, then I think Mac Jones is definitely going to is going to be the number one starter. But if they hire like Mike LaFleur or Nathaniel Hackett, that starts to raise eyebrows for me.
I think they go Bill O'Brien. I think that Mac Jones is the guy going forward, and I think that you got to get him back on track. As for the Vikings, they dismissed Ed Donatel as their defensive coordinator. I thought he wasn't really a fit there.
I think that for Minnesota, I think they should have kept him, believe it or not, because I don't think it was his fault that the defense was that bad. I think the players are just aging. I think that the front office did a
So you think that was a scapegoat move?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. I think that
people said Ed Donatel was the problem.
No, I don't think he was. I think that you had players on this team that were old, that had lost their athleticism, and were not what they once.
Look, the Vikings need to get younger defensively. Their offense is not the problem.
Oh, but here's the thing. Everybody's always going to blame the coach. They're always going to blame the coach. But if you let's say you put Bill Belichick coaching this defense, the Vikings defense would be a disaster, not because Belichick can't coach, because their secondary, guess who was the Vikings' best corner this season? It's a washed-up Patrick Peterson.
Whoa!
That Patrick Peterson being your number one corner will all of a sudden make your defense great. Of course you suck because you had a washed-up Patrick Peterson as your number one corner. Your linebackers were Harrison Smith. He's not what he once was. Your defensive line was great, but your linebackers and your secondary, they were all littered with guys that are washed up or guys that just aren't what they once was or guys that are scrubs. So it's not the coach's fault. It's not Donatel's fault. It's not, whomever they bring in. Like, he's probably going to do a piss poor job because their players are just washed up. They need to get better players. It's not about the coaching. It's about the players. They got to get better players in their secondary. They got to get better linebackers. They got to get, faster and younger at those positions if they want to see improvement on the defensive side of the football.
You're right. The Vikings definitely need to rebuild that defense there. I don't really have a problem with their offense,
No, their offense is great under O'Connell and under Kirk Cousins. And with Justin Jefferson and Thielen, their offense is great. But their defense, they got to get better players.
Well, we got to talk about this. The LA Chargers, they're one of the teams that are looking for a new offensive coordinator. Joe Lombardi and Shane Day are both gone. Where do the Chargers go from there? Go from here, Isaiah? With what should they do at offensive coordinator now? Because on the list it says Greg Olson, the former Raiders offensive coordinator. Zach Robinson is on that list too, and then Luke Stickle, the Titans tight ends coach.
I'm not really feeling any of those guys, to be honest. I think that what the Chargers should do, and hear me out, Lowell, this is a wild idea. Or it's not that wild of an idea, but it's still a little bit wild, is I think they should hire Georgia's offensive coordinator, Todd Monken. He ran a prolific offense at Georgia, and he has had success in the NFL coaching the Cleveland Browns and then with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they had one of the best passing offenses in the NFL. This guy knows how to run a great offense. And look what he's doing with Stetson Bennett, who doesn't have a great arm, and the running game there. He made Stetson Bennett.
We need the Chargers are looking for an offensive coordinator that is going to Justin Herbert's potential is unleashed, but they want to make him even better.
Well, that's why I think Todd Monken would be a better fit, because Todd Monken has a pass-happy offense that also relies on a run game, and I think that he will be able to unleash Justin Herbert, because this guy's unleashing Stetson Bennett. He made Stetson Bennett look like he was Patrick Mahomes out there, or Josh Allen on the football field against TCU and this season and last season as well. So you could see what Todd Monken has done.
So we lost Isaiah there. We were talking about the Chargers offensive coordinator void. And I do think that if it's Todd Monken, I wouldn't mind that move at all, because Justin Herbert would thrive under Todd Monken. Isaiah, we have you back on? Hello? Isaiah, are you there? And he's right, because Todd Monken runs an offense that's very modern, and that helped Georgia win back-to-back national champions. So, anyways, here, let me tell you who I think should be the Rams' offensive coordinator. I think it should be Mike LaFleur, because Mike LaFleur could work with Matthew Stafford. I think he knows Sean McVay pretty well, because Sean McVay has worked with Matt in the past here. And then I think, aside from Mike LaFleur, Nathaniel Hackett could be the quarterbacks coach in LA if Zach Robinson goes back to New England, which I think I could see happening. Or Zach Robinson takes the LA Chargers offensive coordinator job. And then Ben McAdoo, maybe quarterbacks coach or something like that. Who knows? Or Adam Gase. He's a name that's still available at this point. Or something like that here. Or Clint Kubiak, the Denver Broncos quarterbacks coach here. So, anyways, here now, Isaiah said that his Wi-Fi went down here. We are dealing with that here. These technical difficulties here. So, anyways, with that being said, I think we're going to move forward here and talk about who I like winning these conference championship games. So, anyways, here, I said I predicted Bill O'Brien will be the offensive coordinator for the Patriots, and I think I think this will help Mac Jones get his career back on track. I'd like to see that, and then there's another thing that is happening is that Gerard Mayo, he's likely going to get a promotion to being the assistant head coach, which I think Bill Belichick's going to groom him in as the the head coach of the future. So, anyways, folks, now that being said here, now we're going to make our picks for who's going to win the AFC and NFC championship games here. First, we'll start with the NFC championship game. I'm going to pick the Philadelphia Eagles because I really think that the Eagles are hot right now. I think the Niners' Cinderella Brock Purdy story going to come to an end in Philadelphia. And then for the AFC championship game, I'm going to pick the Kansas City Chiefs to beat the Cincinnati Bengals. I think they get revenge on them this year. Anyways, final thoughts and announcements here. We have Batter Up Thursday. Be sure to join us for that. We recap the Hall of Fame and more. And for Isaiah Leung, Lauro signing off for now. Have a great night, everyone. And then we leave you with this.
Chose me. I'm a champion, I need some trophy. I can draw the lane, I can shoot the three. I can run 100 yards, I can throw it deep. I ain't choose the game chose me. I'm a champion, I need some trophy.
take to be a champ. You know ball's life, you should come and join the camp. Title after title, put my rivals off the map. Thought you had a trophy till I came in for the snatch. I was born in it, not sworn in it. I ain't come to play, my wrist mean all business. Running